doing is these goddamn solar panels.
All right, solar panels, are they a scam? Are they good? Are they bad? Let's talk about it. There are so many people out there that are happy, so many people that are not. Well, here's my opinion. We're going to talk about it. As somebody that deals with these things all the time, let's get to it.
All right, my name's Jesse, and it's a little bit different style of video than I normally do. If you guys have been watching my channel, you know I do a lot of, I mess around a lot with solar, but I also do some electrical framing. I like to do some cabinetry, just hobbies. And my latest hobby has been solar. And I picked up solar because I see the value and I see the benefit. But I was scrolling on the old YouTube, and I came across a video on my feed, and it said, solar regrets. People are regretting putting solar panels on their houses. And I'm like, weird. And so, you know, just curious, I clicked it. And I got my guy here, Yak Motley, that's his channel. Seems like a cool guy. I'm pretty sure I get along with him just fine. But he tries to present a kind of balanced perspective and viewpoint on his experience with solar. And he's coming at it from as a realtor. I think that's what my dude's profession is he's a realtor in Florida. And so if you don't know much about solar and you're coming at it just from the viewpoint of kind of selling houses, I could see how solar would be a complication for you, because for a lot of houses, solar is attached to the roof. There's a lot of liability there. But we're going to go through his kind of video. We're going to provide some counterpoint, maybe some education, and it's all for fun. He's providing an opinion on his kind of thoughts on solar, and that's all I'm providing is just an opinion on his opinion. So we'll go through it one by one.
In Palm Springs, we have two different utility companies. So the first one charged me $101 for electricity this month, which is $200 less than they usually do. And the other utility company charged me only $143. So that's also like $200 less than they used to. In total, my bill with solar panels was $280. So that's a 49% decrease in my bill.
All right, my guy Yak Motley's first kind of video he puts out is from some chick in Palm Springs. She dropped 20 grand on an 8 kilowatt grid tied system. I think that's what it is. And it dropped her electricity bill from $560 to $280. So roughly about a 50% decrease in her electric bill, 20 grand. So I think that's a terrible idea. Most people are gonna think that's a terrible idea, but that's one of his videos for like a proponent of solar. And clearly there's plenty of other types of systems that you spend 20 grand is going to wipe away your electricity bill. It's just that particular system on that person's house. She got a raw deal. I don't know if it's the type of solar panels that she got, the angle that they were faced, were they east, west, south, north? You don't know, and none of that's pointed out here. And then another thing I want to mention here is Yak is very limited in his knowledge of solar. So most of the solar that I think he's referring to is grid tied. And by far, I think that's the worst type of way you can go with solar. You grid tie. There's a lot of permits and inspections, fees, red tape, and that's my least favorite way to go about it. Unless you live in a city or county where you don't have a lot of that red tape and all this bloat with the fees and inspections and all this things that kind of make solar more expensive. If you live in a county where it's really easy to grid tie, go that route. But personally, I live in Arizona, and it's a lot of permits, inspection, fees, and it bloats the cost of solar. And so to get away from grid tying, you can do off-grid and just use the grid as a backup. And that's my preferred way to go about solar. If you want to learn more about solar, off-grid, grid-tied, hybrid kind of setups, I got a video kind of going over it. Feel free to scroll through my channel and check out all the videos. But many ways to go about solar, but grid-tied systems are by far my least favorite. So this is one of his kind of videos. I guess as a proponent of solar, of course it's a bad take.
Produced no electricity since it was installed. I had to remove the system and do 1,000 different things to fix it. But this system is turned on right now and it is producing 3,715 watt. There's a lot of people who had solar panel systems installed that they paid for.
All right, my next video here from Yak is him bringing on a guy who installs solar. I think he's got a YouTube channel, but he's complaining about solar systems. So a guy who installs solar complaining about solar systems, already it looks bad for if you're a proponent of solar, but that's his evidence for solar. And I'll just say, like, if you want more of like a proponent of solar, just Google or YouTube solar, hit search, and you're not going to find this guy. You know who you're going to find? Will Prowse. If you go right now into Google, I'll do it right now. Oh shoot. Let me see. Let's go here. Just gonna open up YouTube on my laptop. All right, I pulled up a fresh browser here. I'm actually just gonna try and screen record exactly what I'm doing so you guys can see. Come on, there we go. All right, I'm just gonna type in YouTube. There we go. Let's just type in solar. See what pops up. Oops. All right, here's our first video on solar. Wouldn't you know, the first video on solar, Will Prowse. DIY solar power with Will Prowse. 249,000 views on a Chico budget solar carport. Let's keep going. There's another video here, 3 million views, DIY solar setup. Some guy named City Prepping, or that's his channel name. And then best solar power banks, Footprint Hero, 1 million views. Let's see, another City Prepper. Another Will Prowse video, bifacial solar panels. Let's keep going. Oh, another another Will Prowse video. Learn to DIY. That guy's got a pretty good channel. He just installed the solar system. Not impressed. I think he got ripped off. Inventor KR, 1 million views. Undecided with Matt Farrell. That guy's really he's got a good YouTube channel. But he talks a lot about other stuff, not just solar, but you want to learn about solar, his is a good channel. All right, so if I had to guess, we just randomly hit solar. I scrolled through about 10 videos, and then probably about 3 of them were Will's videos. I would say Will is probably a better person if you're trying to find a proponent for solar. And in not one of those videos did I see the other guy, Solar Goat, the guy he brought on. I'm sure the guy has good channels. I think he does a lot of grid tied stuff, which is my least favorite. But why he picked him and why he picked that particular clip, I don't know. But it probably was one of the worst videos you could have picked for if you're trying to show a good angle of solar. It was literally a bad angle. All right, let's see what he's got next.
Solar panels seem like a really good deal because of the way they try to spin it, but really you're getting into massive debt, and you have to remember this. Like, forget about the monthly payments that are always going to be less than your electric bill, because that's literally how it's designed. That's kind of like the scam part of it. They can always crunch those numbers to make it less than your electric bill. But what you need to remember is you're going to be in that much debt. So if you have a mortgage on your house and
So this is where everything is slanted against solar. The 2 first videos are like, oh, look, you could save a little bit of money on your electric bill. And then you had a solar installer complaining about solar that it didn't work. And so from here on out, it's people complaining about solar and realtors complaining about solar. But this is like a balanced perspective that you're getting from my guy, Yak Motley, who I'm sure is cool. Not throwing shade at him at all. But I think he's just skewed a tiny bit. And so we got this chick here saying that the scam of solar is that your solar bill, if you finance it, is less than your electric bill. And that's the scam. Instead of paying the utility company, you're going to pay the solar company. And it's less. That's the scam. That's what she's saying. Of course, my guy Yak didn't bring that up or provide any pushback, but that's the person he brought on is saying the scam is you do the financing and your solar bill is now less than your electric bill, which that's the whole point, is instead of paying the utility company, who every year could theoretically raise your rates, you're just going to pay your solar bill, and your solar bill is going to be constant. If you financed it, I'm not a big proponent of financing, especially through a solar company or solar installer. If you're going to finance, use a credit card with like 0% interest for a couple of years, or go to a bank, a credit union, and just get a personal loan. Least, favorable is the solar installer or solar company that does the financing. But Even those guys, they might have some good programs where your financing for solar will be cheaper than your current utility bill. And if that's the case, you can lock in for those, I don't know, 20 years, 10 years, whatever your term is for the loan for the solar, you're going to be set at, we'll just say $200 a month or $250 a month. But you're not going to have a utility bill anymore. If it's, if it's done right. If it's done right, it washes away your utility bill, and then instead of paying your utility company, you're paying for your equipment. And you're safeguarded against rate hikes, which most utility companies are doing. So every year, if you notice your utility bill goes up, you can't really do anything about it. Most of the times, the utility companies, they have a monopoly. And so there's no like, oh, I'm just going to get my utilities from the other utility company. It doesn't work that way. You get your utility companies from one place and one place only. And they have control over the rates, and you don't like it, go kick rocks, because there's nowhere else to get it. And so that's the kind of one of the benefits of solar is you can escape that kind of a partnership with the utility company by going solar. But of course, none of that's mentioned here. But we're bringing it up just so everybody can learn about it.
Them an entire year. They hooked up the solar panels on the roof pretty quickly, but I think it was an entire year before the permit and everything went through for the solars to be connected to Duke Energy. And guess what? During that entire time, we had to pay our electric bill plus the monthly payment for the solar panel. So you need to remember that.
All right, so it's the same chick saying that it took a year for her system to get installed and operating, where it was producing electricity. She even mentioned like the solar panels went up pretty quick, and solar's not complicated. It's not time consuming at all. Like I could throw up a solar system in a weekend if I, really wanted to. It's not no solar system unless I can't imagine a solar system that's going to take a year. But if you grid tie, which is my least favorite way of going about solar, then it's possible because there's a lot of red tape. There's inspections, fees, permits. However, if you're grid tying, it's because you're trying to sell back electricity. You're trying to use the utility company as your battery, and that's all grid tying is. You're selling back whatever you use or whatever you don't use for your house's needs. You just sell back to the utility company, and so you're not needing a battery because you sell back the electricity. And in theory, your account would build up credits, and depending on your net metering rate, which is another con of grid tied systems, is there's different rates at what you buy electricity and sell back. A long time ago, it used to be a 1-to-1. You buy at a certain rate, you get to sell back at a certain rate. But of course, now you get pennies on the dollar. You get buy at a high rate and you get to sell at a low rate, which is a bad deal. Again, why I'm not a fan of grid tied. But when you grid tie, there's all these inspections and fees because you're trying to sell back electricity, and there's dangers when you're pushing back electricity to the grid. If the power goes out in your neighborhood and it's not connected properly to the grid, they don't want you pushing back a bunch of electricity while there's a lineman working on the power pole next to your house, because you could hurt somebody. And so there's all these kind of safety requirements that are necessary when you grid tie. But if you're off grid, you avoid all that because you're not using the utility company as a battery. You have the batteries. And so whatever your house uses for electricity, your solar will cover that. And if you're making excess, it just goes into your batteries. But it's a one-way street. You either self-consume your solar or you put it in a battery to use it for later. But there's no selling back to the electric company. It's a one-way street. If your solar is not enough, your batteries are low, you just buy electricity like you normally would. But at no point are you trying to sell back. And so the beauty of off-grid is you can bypass a bunch of these permits and fees because you're not connected to the grid and you're not trying to push your electricity back. Your electricity that you're producing, your solar, is for self-consumption. That's it. And so you avoid the headaches of grid-tied systems. It's a little tiny bit more expensive because you got to pay for the batteries, and the batteries are expensive. They're getting way cheaper though. So that was one of the kind of arguments against off-grid of an off-grid system is you had to buy batteries. And batteries 5 years ago were expensive, but now they're getting cheap. So you're better off going batteries, and don't even grid tie, in my opinion, because it's going to save you a big headache of all these permits, inspections, and fees, because you're trying to push back electricity to the grid, and it complicates things. And in her case, it was a year for them to install it because of all the inspections and permits they had to get for her install.
Really big red flag with solar panels for me was within 1 year, and this is no joke, within 1 year, the cost of them went up, I think, by like $50. Okay, so that payment that we were originally quoted went up by $50. So who's to say how much is going to go in the further years? And
all right, so again, it's the same chick, and her payment went up, and it has nothing to do with solar. It's more to do with the financing that she got. And so I'm sure there's probably her type of financing there's probably gave her like an introductory rate, and then after a year, the rate goes up. And so I'm sure it was explained to her. I'm sure she signed in a contract somewhere, but maybe she didn't read it. She forgot about it. I don't know. And most of the kind of research I've done is when they do these kind of introductory rates, the kind of goal is that when you do your kind of taxes and you get the rebate, like 30% of whatever your system costs, you use that rebate towards paying down the system. But a lot of people don't. And so that's kind of the grace period, the introductory, where it's a little bit cheaper, is because next year when you file your taxes and you get that 30% of that system, you use that money to kind of offset that $50, so you're back to normal. But a lot of people don't do that. So, but again, that has more to do with the financing kind of aspect of how you got the solar system. Nothing to do with like the solar technology and whether solar systems are bad. It has more to do with the financing that you got for it. And so you just got a bad lender, but there's plenty of good ones.
50-50 relationship with them, because what they don't tell you, if you don't pay for them cash, they're going to put a lien on your property, and that can be tough to navigate when you go to sell the property. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You got to.
All right, our next video here from Yak. He says if you don't pay for your solar system cash, or he refers to them as solar panels, if you don't pay for your solar panels cash, they put a lien on your house. Again, it's not the actual solar panels or the system, it's the financing that you get for them. If you get a personal loan through a credit union or just your local bank, they're not they're not going to put a lien on your house. It's going to affect your credit if you don't pay for it, but it's not a lien to your house. And if you try to sell your house and you have a personal loan, it doesn't affect the sale of the house. You're still responsible for paying the bank or the credit union for the solar system when you sell your house. So again, he throws out just a blanket statement of if you don't pay cash, they put a lien on your house. That's only if you do it through like a solar installer with, I don't know, whatever contract that they have where it's attached to your house. But you can get financing plenty of other ways where it's attached to you personally, but not your house. And so if you sell your house, there's no issue. But it's not discussed here with my guy Yak Motley.
I'm a realtor in Fort Worth, Texas, and I have yet to see solar be a good idea on homes. Not only myself, but all these other realtors before me have said the same thing, and it checks out. Usually, you are signing up for a 20 to 30 year long loan or lease. Why would you lease something? Like, you're already paying for power, so why would you? Anyways, so you're paying for that. Usually in Texas.
Right, so he brings on a realtor who, again, is just looking at it from the point of selling houses. And her point is you're signing a 20 to 30 year financing kind of lease, or lease is another one of my least favorite ways to go about solar. But again, even if you sign a lease, which is probably the worst way to go about solar, it safeguards you from utility rate hikes, which every year stuff gets expensive and utility rates are going to continue raising rates. And if you have solar, you don't worry about that, because instead of paying the utility company, you just pay for your equipment, your solar system, your panels, your inverter, your batteries, whatever it is. You don't worry about for the next 20 years whether your utility company is raising rates. And guess what? After the 20 years, then you really don't care because you don't have a payment for the solar because it's paid off, and it's giving you free electricity. So again, could have brought all that stuff up, but we didn't decide to do that. But it checked out. Real quick, I'll just mention that if I was a realtor, it wouldn't be a hard sell for me to pitch solar or a house that already has solar. And it has to do with everything we discussed about you're safeguarding your house from, or you're safeguarding yourself from utility rate hikes. Because just look at historical trends in the pricing of electrical. It's going up like everything else. So that's how I would pitch it to a customer looking at a house that has solar. I'm like, oh, by the way, this house has solar. You are going to take over the financing of, the term agreements. Let's just say it was $250 a month, but this system has, zeroed out the electric bill, and so instead of paying, you won't have a utility bill. As soon as you move into this house, you will not have a utility bill except for whatever the connection fee is. And once the term of the financing loan is paid for, you won't have any payment for the solar, and you probably won't have any electricity bill either. So that's just one way that you could go about kind of pitching the solar system to a potential buyer. That's the angle I would take. Many more other angles you could take. You could say that you're energy independent. A lot of people don't like relying on anybody for anything. They like to be independent, and a solar system gives you that independence to a degree. If you're grid tied, you're still kind of hooked up to the grid. So if the grid goes down, your solar system's no good. That's another reason why I don't like grid tied. If I'm selling a house and it's got an off-grid system, oh man, I'll sell that sucker and I'll have that thing closed by the end of the day, because there's just so many ways you can go about selling that. And the primary kind of angle I would take for selling a house that has solar and had batteries, oh man, if the power goes out, your family is safe. A hurricane, a storm hits, your family is safe. Everything inside your house is going to run as normal. You're safeguarded from the utility company. I mean, it's just a wins across the board. So again, that's just the angle I would take. There's lots of ways to kind of pitch solar. All right, last thing I'll add, especially if it's an older couple or a couple that's nearing retirement or somebody that's already retired and they're looking to buy a house. Once you retire, like you're on a fixed income. For a lot of people, whether it's Social Security, a 401k, a pension, like your income is now fixed. And so the last thing you want is surprises with the utility company and rate hikes. And so this is another kind of benefit to solar. Even if you have to finance it, there's no surprises, especially if you just get a standard loan with a fixed interest rate and it's 10 or 20 years. That's what it is. There's no surprises. So you're, again, safeguarded from utility rate hikes. And if you're on a fixed income because you're retired, you're disabled, whatever the case is, you need to know exactly down to the kind of dollar what your monthly expenses are going to be, because that you have a budget you have to stick to. And solar gives you some protection, so there's no surprises.
Things going on there. What they don't tell you, that a solar panel's life expectancy is only going to be like 20 or so years, and as they age, they're going to produce less and less electricity. So you got to factor that in. If you put them on an old roof, that roof is, for the most part here on the Gulf Coast, that insurance company is going to require you to replace that roof after 15 years.
All right, 2 points we're going to bring up here. So he mentioned solar panels have a life expectancy, and to an extent he's right, but he did bring up the fact that they're going to last 20 years. Well, they're going to last much longer than 20 years. They're going to outlive Yak Motley. They're going to outlive my guy here. The only thing is, in about 20 years, they're just probably only going to produce about 80% of what they did when they were new. So when they were new, if your solar system was brand new, it was producing 10,000 watts per hour. In 20 years, it's probably going to produce 8,000 watts per hour. So that's the point he's trying to get across is in 20 years, the point he's trying to get across is that in 20 years, that's it. The solar panels are no good. But I don't know if he just has a misunderstanding of how it works, or he just misspoke, or what he meant to say is what I'm trying to say is in 20 years, they're just not going to produce like they used to when they were brand new. So the second point he brings up is insurance. And there's a valid point there, depending on where you mount your solar panels if you're mounting them on the roof of your house. So, you know, there's a liability there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that on a couple other clips.
Issue for your solar panels. There are a few ways I would say that they work. Pay cash for them. Don't put them on your roof. Put them on a shed, put them in the backyard, put them on a skid back there, put them on something. Don't put them on your roof. If you do it that way, where you can have the batteries and the grid and everything off your house, you're going to take away a lot of the risk of fire. You're going to take away a lot of the roof damage problems, because every time you poke a hole in that roof.
All right. So he points out a couple of things. Some of this stuff I kind of agree with a little bit. He says only it makes sense to get solar if you pay for cash. Definitely don't agree with that. Again, what you're doing when you get solar, whether you pay for cash, you put it on a credit card, you go to a bank, credit union, you finance it through the solar company, what you're doing for however long the terms are, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you're safeguarding yourself from the utility company. If you get a system and it's designed well, you shouldn't have an electric bill. And if you don't have an electric bill, well, instead of paying the utility company, you just pay your solar equipment. And you're not affected by the utility company every year trying to raise rates, because it doesn't affect you because you don't use their electricity. And so in my mind, I'd much rather pay for my solar equipment, even if I had to finance it, than pay the utility company, because in 10, 20 years or however long the term is, after those 20 years are up, the equipment's paid for. And so not only do I not have an electric bill, but now I don't have the solar bill anymore. So I think he's, again, a little off on that one. And then he says, don't put them on your roof. That's my least favorite place to put solar panels is on a roof. If you can put them on a porch, a shed, kind of like what he mentions, pergola, on the ground with ground mounts, that's by far the best way, in my opinion, to go about it, because you avoid the risk of anything to do with your roof, and you avoid any risk with insurance and liability, because you have a lot of these, your solar on top of your roof. And then he mentions batteries, grid, and the risk of fire. So there's a risk with fire, but it's not any greater risk than you hanging Christmas lights on the side of your house, or if you install a light fixture on the side of your house. Just because you get solar doesn't mean your risk of fire increases 25% or 30%. Or there's no evidence to support, having solar, significantly increases your risk of fire. It's just, I just don't, there's not that type of evidence to show. And if there was a significant risk for fire, then whoever installed it's not doing it right. And so we'll move on to the next point, but you guys get what I'm trying to say.
Oh my God. Now we're going to turn this into a story time too. Let me tell you why it's the worst thing. As of right now, half of my house has I shouldn't say little. It has no electricity whatsoever. I don't know how they did it, but these solar panels and the battery from it has just blew my circuit breakers in my house. Just blew them completely. So, and it's a Sunday, and the company that the solar panels came from.
All right. So our next person here, our next solar victim, she has a solar system, and apparently she has batteries. That's good. That's definitely the way to go. But it blew out her circuit breakers. Highly unlikely that's what happened. I'm sure the inverter failed. Something went wrong with the inverter, and that's why she doesn't have electricity in her house. Highly unlikely that her circuit breakers blew out of her load center, her electrical panel. And it looks like hers is probably a grid-tied system. So most grid-tied systems, if the inverter fails, those companies will put a transfer switch. So I don't know if they educate people on the transfer switch. But if the inverter fails, instead of using solar, you just hit the transfer switch and you're back to grid. It's like a safety feature, and most grid-tied companies put that in there because inverters will fail. They don't last forever. So that's another thing that I just want to point out here. Just because you get solar doesn't mean it lasts forever and you're going to be trouble-free. Like solar panels are probably trouble-free. Batteries to an extent are a little bit, also kind of trouble-free, but the kind of weak point in the system is the inverter. That's the one that has more of the moving parts. And so that's more likely to fail. And if it fails, usually that's what the transfer switch is there for. You hit the transfer switch and you're not using solar anymore, you're directly off grid, so you can pull the inverter that's failed off the wall, work on it, replace it, repair it, put it back on the wall, hit the transfer switch, you're back on solar. And so literally, if it's a flick of the switch, I don't know if they teach customers that there's a transfer switch that does that. But that's all that's going on here. I'm almost positive. I can't say with certainty, but if I had to guess, the inverter failed and It's just a transfer switch that would fix her problem. 1 second switch and she's back to using the utility company. So let's move on to something else here.
You don't know who installed them. They affect the roof. They affect the wiring of the house. You've got this massive battery. How many times have we seen these batteries go up in flames? Quite a few. And the insurance companies are going to start getting people. Like, I don't know.
All right.
You don't know who.
Our guy Yak is saying you don't know who installed them. It affects the wiring and batteries. They catch on fire. Again, I think he's just misinformed on battery chemistry and battery technology. Like, all the batteries, unless it's like a old school lead acid battery, but most of the new batteries are all lithium iron phosphate, and that chemistry is designed not to catch on fire. So I don't know what he's trying to get out there. I'm pretty sure he just wants to point out that there's a fire risk, but again, new batteries are designed not to catch on fire. Old batteries, yeah, but that's older technology that is not in use anymore today. Most of the new tech in batteries is lithium iron phosphate, and all those batteries are literally designed not to catch on fire. So it's impossible for them to catch on fire. The chemistry doesn't work that way. So what else does he say? Wiring. It affects the wiring of the house. Almost like solar is just like a disease. It diseased the wiring of the house. It contaminated the wiring of the house. Nothing in the wiring of the house has been contaminated, affected. The only difference that's going on is instead of the utility company providing the power to the house, it's now the solar system. And that's it. All the wires that are running through the house, they're not contaminated, affected, none of that. I don't know. I'm curious if I were to ask him, like how are they affected? Like, are you saying that they're diseased or they're contaminated? Like, what do you mean they're affected? The wiring is affected. No, the wiring is affected in one spot. And the only difference is in that one spot, that instead of the utility company providing power to your house, it's now the solar system. That's it. The rest of the wiring in your house is, it's normal. There's nothing going on. All right, let's move on.
I'll tell you about. You will not get power when there's snow on your panels. You will not get power whenever the sun goes down at 4 o'clock. If your house is gas, you're still gonna have an Ameren bill. Just saying.
That's true. How many times do we see that there's issues? You know, snow, rain. So if you're in an area like Seattle, wherever it rains a lot, you know, you're not going to get as much production as you thought you would. If you lived out in the desert, you can get a lot of production. You really got to factor that in there too. Do the math on how much are you really.
A couple things here my guy Yak could have pushed back on, but he didn't. Common sense. Solar panels only work in the sun. Of course they're not going to work after 4 p.m. when it starts getting dark. Of course they're not going to work when there's a foot of snow on them. The sun can't reach the solar panels. It's just common sense. And my guy Yak, if he was trying to present a kind of balanced opinion, he would have just scrapped that clip and been like, that's common sense. Everybody knows that you're not going to get solar production. You're not going to make electricity when there's a foot of snow on your solar panels. You're not going to make electricity at night because it doesn't work that way. And then, of course, it's not going to affect your gas bill. The gas is completely, don't use gas appliances if you don't want a gas bill. Again, my guy Yak, he could have just mentioned a tiny bit, but he didn't bring it up at all. And what else? I forgot what he was saying about other stuff. Let's see.
Don't get solar panels. I have countless examples of my clients personally, other people's clients that this has happened to, so don't get them.
It's not necessarily the solar panels, it's the logistics behind the deal of the solar panels.
All right. Finally, my guy Yak brings up somewhat of a decent point. It's not solar panel or solar system or solar technology in general. It's more of the financing, where you put them, how it's installed. But solar in general is a good idea, especially if you're trying to safeguard yourself from the utility company, which are raising rates. Solar protects you from rate hikes. And of course, the chick that was on there is another realtor, and he was like begging people not to get solar. And I think it has to do with the solar financing. That's why a lot of these realtors don't like solar, because of the way it's financed. And when you go through a solar installer, the contract, I'm not sure how, but it's somehow tied into the house. And so it becomes a complication if you're trying to sell the house, and that's what realtors do. And they don't like to wait, and they don't like complications. They want a quick sale. So I get why realtors don't like solar. But if my guy Yak was trying to make kind of a balanced, fair assessment of solar, you failed. You didn't do a good job, Yak. And he's a realtor, so it's good to hear kind of one viewpoint, and he brings up a couple good points about insurance, liability, financing, but overall, I think my guy Yak, I'm gonna have to give you a C minus, a D for your kind of assessment on whether solar is good or not.
You've heard from many different perspectives here about the idea of solar panels. And in conclusion, I would say just a handful of things. Pay cash for them. Don't put them on your house. Put them on a shed, on a skid in the side yard, platform in the backyard, stand them up somehow. But the moment you start poking holes in your roof, you're gonna start having problems. Create insurance problem, roof problem, warranty problems. Every extra note you put on your house is one more ability to lose your house. There are many people that are...
All right, so we'll kind of break down Yak's final thoughts on solar. First thing he said, he gave us many perspectives on solar. Sorry, Yak, I have to disagree. He gave us the realtor perspective, and then just a couple random people who had bad financing, had bad installers, but I didn't learn too much about solar. A couple points he brings up. He says you should pay cash or don't get solar. If you could pay cash, great, but not a lot of people can, and financing is an option. So I would probably say my least favorite way to go about paying for solar is financing through an actual solar company. I think you're better off going to a bank or credit union, or what I did. I used a credit card. A lot of people don't like using credit cards, but I got a credit card. I think it was Wells Fargo. I think it had 24 months or 22 months of 0% interest. So for 2 years, I don't make any payments. My solar system cost me 13 grand. I put 9 grand on that credit card, and then I came out of pocket 4 grand. And so for 2 years, I have to pay $9,000 off. And during the summertime, my electric bill in Arizona, $500, $600. And so instead of paying the utility company $500 or $600 a month for the summer, I just pay down the credit card. And for me, it's different for everybody, but just in 2 years of not paying the utility company, if I had to guess, it's probably like 3 or 4 grand. So that's like 6 grand that I'm paying. Instead of paying the utility company, I'm just gonna pay towards my solar. So that leaves me with 3 grand to come up with at the end of the 2 years. And so it's okay. If you have to carry a balance for 3 grand at, I don't know, 18 or 19%, it's not the end of the world. It's not ideal, but hopefully you'll have 3 grand, and you will, because when I did my taxes, I got 30% for the 13 grand. So that would cover you. So again, lots of ways to go about paying for solar. Cash is the best way, but not everybody has 10 grand or 5 grand or 20 grand. And he brings up putting solar on your house. My least favorite is the roof of the actual house, the livable structure, but it's not a deal breaker. If the roof has the best location, it's south facing, there's no shade, no obstructions, it's got a good angle, and I don't have a big backyard or anything else, I'll throw it on the roof. But again, not my best place to do it, because you have to take into consideration the liability with insurance and all that stuff. But my preferred way is to build a shed, a pergola, some sort of structure, could be a ground mount, whatever, in the backyard, and just throw the solar on that. Let's see, what else does he bring up? Financing. We already touched on it. So I think we'll wrap this video up. I'm pretty sure Yak's a good guy. He does a lot of videos on a bunch of different topics. And so he gave an opinion. We are going to give our opinion. And hopefully we get some education out there and people have a better understanding of solar and the benefits, things to look out for, financing, different types of solar, off-grid, hybrid, grid tied. And if you want to learn more about solar, definitely follow me, subscribe to my channel, but just Google or YouTube solar, and you're going to find really good content on some people who do solar all the time. They've done a lot of research, and you're going to realize that there's a lot of benefits, and solar makes a lot of sense, especially if you live somewhere where there's a lot of sun. It makes less sense if you live somewhere where there's not a lot of sun. But not trying to make this video too long, but we'll kind of leave it at this one. And again, not my typical video, but it was fun. Might do some more of these.